sentence. We continued it to today's date. Ms. Yarney was the attorney of record originally. Corey Tennyson is standing in for her today. She's out with family issue. Jeremy Plesha is here on behalf of Mr. Wickless, and Mr. Wickless is also present. We are all appearing via Zoom. Mr. Tennyson, I guess I'm going to turn it over to you. Do you have any witnesses that you wanted to call today to talk about the conditions that were recommended? There was both a pre-sentence investigation as well as a psychosexual evaluation. And I believe you have a witness to call. Is that right?
Your Honor, and I think Dr. Maureen is present here today. If she could show, oh, I see now she's shown her video. And Doctor, I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. Could you let me know?
Yes, it's Dr. Morin, M-O-R-I-N, Morin.
Thank you. So, Doctor, could you please state your full name and spell it for the record?
Matana, M-A-T-A-N-A, Levia, L-E-V-I-A, Morin, M-O-R-I-N.
And Your Honor, I guess before we get too far, I would just ask if it's possible for, I see Mr. Wickless is unmuted at this time. Maybe he could mute just to minimize outside interaction.
Right, I'm going to mute myself as well. Let me swear in the witness first, and then I will do that. Is it Morin or Maureen?
Morin.
Ms. Morin, will you please raise your right hand? Looks like you're frozen. I can't tell. There you go. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the information you're about to give me today will be the truth?
I do.
Okay, go ahead and lower your hand and state your first and last name for the record.
Dr. Matana Morin.
Go ahead, Mr. Tennyson.
Thank you. Doctor, how are you currently employed?
I am currently under contract with Ramsey County Community Corrections, and I complete court-ordered psychosexual evaluations or psychological evaluations.
And would you begin by describing what type of educational background qualifies you for your current position?
I received my doctorate in 2005. Prior to that, I had a master's degree in 1992. I've been licensed as a psychologist in the state of Minnesota since 1995. I worked in Hennepin County at various positions providing psychological services, and then I went on for my doctorate. As I said, I obtained that in 2005, and I did my internship at the state of Minnesota Correctional Department, and then I was hired on as an employee there. And I provided psychological services to general population, and then I moved into the sex offender treatment program, which is located at Lino Lakes Correctional Facility. While I was working full-time at the state of Minnesota, I also began doing these psychosexual evaluations through the mental health program through Ramsey County. And that was in 2010. In 2011, they discontinued providing that service, and then I was hired on directly.
I don't think he was convicted of anything, Michelle. He pled out.
That ever since.
And it looks like in your curriculum vitae, that began in May of 2012, is that correct?
Correct.
And you've been employed in the same position then for approximately 10 years?
Correct.
And is your primary focus now doing these psychosexual evaluations?
Yes, it is.
Is there any way of you estimating in the last 10 years, how many psychosexual evaluations you may have conducted?
Oh, I'm bad at estimating, but I'd have to say a minimum of a couple of thousand. Considering the fact that I also did them full time while I was employed at the sex offender treatment program at Lino Lakes.
And were those similar evaluations that you were conducting at that time as you're doing now?
Yes, as a matter of fact, the template is the same.
And could you describe for those of us that might not know exactly what a psychosexual is, what is it?
What I would do is, first of all, in order for me to conduct a psychosexual, I need to have either a plea or a finding of guilt in the case. I do not do pre-plea evaluations. I take the history, I document the criminal complaint, and then I take a full history of the individual, a psychological history, their history while they were growing up, their education, their family dynamics, and then I conduct some psychological testing. I need to know what their cognitive functioning is. I need to know some personality, objective personality factors. It can't be just an subjective opinion on my part. And then I also use the static 99R, and that evaluates, it's based on the record, the person's record, and it evaluates their risk to reoffend sexually or violently in the future. And I do a dynamic risk needs response. And I put it all together and determine treatment needs, and if there are any psychological issues that need to be taken into account, accommodated for in treatment.
Thank you.
That about sums it.
And doctor, with these different components or these different diagnostic tools, my guess is you don't decide what to apply each time. Is there some type of governing board or some type of standard that is set on what testing or components should be done each time?
As far as cognitive testing, that is one that is a judgment call on my part. If somebody, or personality testing, if somebody has, there's minimum cognitive level of functioning that an individual needs to have in order to perform a MMPI versus a personality assessment inventory, for instance. Though that's the only leeway. Otherwise, the items that I laid out are what is expected by MNATSA, which is Minnesota Association for Treatment of Sexual Abuse, and ATSA, the national level of Association for the Treatment of Sexual Abuse.
And doctor, are you a member of any professional organizations?
I'm a member of both of those.
Okay. And are there ongoing trainings that you do or literature that you read?
Yes.
Can you describe sort of how you stay current?
Right. I'm expected to complete a certain number of continuing education units every year, and I do that primarily at the MNATSA or ATSA yearly training. And I do that because this is my primary focus, so I need to have that focus in my training.
Now, doctor, I'm going to ask Mr. Kelly to screen share and show you what's been marked previously as Exhibit 1. And Mr. Kelly, if I could ask you to scroll down to a document that is that has the doctor's name at the top, as well as her contact information. I believe might be the second or third document. Okay. Doctor, do you see this document that's on the screen right now?
My curriculum vitae, yes.
And is that a document that fairly and accurately characterizes your educational background, your professional experience, your organization membership, things like that?
Yes, it does.
And is it in fact a document that accurately reflects what we've talked about here for the last few minutes?
I believe so, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Judge, it's a little bit odd on Zoom. I'm planning on offering the entire exhibit at the end of my presentation.
Okay.
Doctor, then moving on to an Anthony Michael Wicklace, Wicklace. Were you assigned in your current employment to do a psychosexual evaluation report with Mr. Wicklace?
Yes, I was.
And are you able to see on Zoom here the individual that is identified as Anthony Wicklace?
Yes, I do.
And do you recognize him perhaps from the evaluation?
I believe so, yes.
Did you meet in person? Did you meet on Zoom?
No, in person.
Okay. But nonetheless, you did do some testing on March 4th, 2022 with an Anthony Michael Wicklace. Is that correct?
Yes.
What components of a typical psychosexual evaluation report did you decide to do with Mr. Wicklace?
I started out by getting informed consent, written consent to completing the evaluation. I then moved into doing some preliminary cognitive testing to get a ballpark figure of where he was at. For instance, if I'm evaluating someone and if I find from scores and my interaction with them that they have below normal or very low functioning, that's going to impact the rest of my testing. So I start out with that, and he scored in as a low average range of cognitive functioning. And then I went into getting a history from him, his childhood development, adult development, psychosexual history, medical history, mental health and substance abuse history, and I asked him for his version of the events, and then he at the last portion of it, he completed the personality assessment inventory.
Now, before we get to whether he accepted any type of responsibility in your evaluation, what information did you have about what the victim had said occurred? Where did you get that information from?
From the criminal complaint.
And it seems the information was there was some type of sexual assault as well as the victim being tased. Does that
Yes
accurately characterize it?
He tased
Now,
the victim?
When you asked Mr. Wicklace about what he did wrong or what offense he committed, what was his response?
He denied. Excuse me a moment, I'll look this up.
Wicklace. Wick.
He
Lace.
denied committing the offense as it was outlined in the criminal complaint. He denied that he followed the victim from the property from which she was being removed by police. He said that she had come to him to ask for a ride. He said he had been listening to police scanners and arrived at the home before the police arrived. And because he likes to film the events, he said he asked the landlord if he needed help getting the girl out of his home, and the landlord said sure. He claimed that the victim asked him for a ride and that he was at first hesitant to give her a ride, but did so anyway, and that she began throwing things out of his car and wouldn't get out. He said he tased her when she wouldn't leave his vehicle, and he pulled her out. He stated that he has a stab vest, quote unquote, that was given to him by a bounty hunter a couple years ago when he was helping to film the bounty hunter's work. And he said he has a YouTube channel where he posted the events in order to make money.
Nonetheless, it was your understanding that the defendant had actually pled guilty to some offenses prior to doing the psychosexual with you, correct?
I wouldn't have completed the psychosexual without that.
In your experience in all of these years of doing these evaluations, is it typical or atypical that these types of offenders have struggle accepting responsibility for what they've done?
It's very common.
And is there a particular medical or therapeutic tool that can help address them to address those concerns?
That's part of what they would do in treatment.
After all of your evaluation, and in this case, you made some specific recommendations. Did that include treatment?
Yes, it did. Very specifically, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll let this outdoors.
Can you be more
Thank you.
specific than that, or did you just simply recommend
I feel
treatment?
rotten.
Thank you.
No, I was very specific
not
about
sorry.
the need for it to be in a program that utilizes a group milieu instead of an individual one-on-one type of treatment. The reason being that the research shows that group milieu, with a few exceptions, is the best in providing treatment, because you have other individuals who are also convicted of sex offenders that can help challenge the individual, and they challenge each other in reality.
Here you go,
in
Alex. You'll
coming
find
to
this
terms with what
useful.
they've done in a non-threatening manner,
You can watch it in
and
its
it
entirety
avoids
there. The link for the Zoom meeting is in the
confrontational,
description,
possible
Alex.
confrontational
You can log in and not have to
event
deal
that
with any
can
of
take
this.
place if it's just the therapist and the offender. And furthermore, there's more accountability. The more people you have in that group milieu, the more accountability there is.
And did you make any additional recommendations aside from this specific treatment program recommendation?
Yes, that he should not be allowed to own or operate a police band radio or any of the equipment that he had in his possession used in the assault, and that it's important that he obtain and maintain employment and housing.
Yeah, it's
May
all
I
good. It's all good.
go on?
Well,
that?
let me start. So I haven't seen that very often. Not use police band radio. Obviously, the facts of this case must have factored into your recommendation on that. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. I think it's problematic in his case. It's obviously led to what has occurred in this instant offense.
Did it cause you concern that he asserted himself as an authority figure to the victim?
It did. Yeah. Yes.
Well, if I could ask Mr. Kelly to share screen again. All of the things we talked about with regard to the psychosexual evaluation report that we talked about today, that actually was put into written form. Is that correct, Doctor?
Yes.
And that was submitted to the court?
Yes, it was.
And looking at Mr. Kelly's share screen, can he identify what this document is as part of Exhibit 1?
This is the psychosexual evaluation report, that I submitted after putting all of that information together.
And at the end, it does summarize, in fact, your specific recommendations for Mr. Whitglaze.
Yes, it does.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Now, Doctor, I know that Mr. Plesha provided you with some information and video clip of the victim, and the victim seemed to be distressed, perhaps on some type of chemicals. We don't really know. The body camera video. Did you watch that 23 minutes that Mr. Plesha asked you to watch?
I did.
And did that observation from the body cam video of some of the things that the victim was saying, does that in any way change your recommendation that Mr. Whitglaze is appropriate for a sex offender treatment program?
No, it doesn't. It has no bearing on it.
And would it change your opinion that treatment is appropriate if you knew that the defendant only admitted to touching the breast of the victim and tasing her? He did not admit masturbating with his penis out in front of her. If you knew that, would that change your recommendation for treatment?
No, it would not.
Thank you, Doctor.
So he did not
No further
masturbating?
questions, but what I'd like to do before I turn it over to Mr. Plesha is I'd like to submit Exhibit 1. The only additional documents contained in Exhibit 1
it's
are
funny,
already
but it's
part of
not.
the court record. It is the copy of the plea petition and the excerpt from the guilty plea hearing. So I believe you can take judicial notice of both of those, Your Honor, and I would respectfully submit Exhibit 1 into evidence at this time.
Any objection, Mr. Plesha?
No objection.
All right, the exhibit will be received. And I should also note that after our hearing in April, Mr. Plesha did provide the court with the video of the incident of when the police came in contact with Ms. Stroud, and I did review that in its entirety.
All the way to the end, Your Honor, the hour and a half.
Yes, I did.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Plesha?
Yes, Your Honor. All right, good afternoon, Dr. Morin. I'm going to take off right where Mr. Tennyson left off. You had indicated that you had watched that video with Kelly Stroud, the victim in this case, right?
Correct.
And is it fair to say also that in the basis of your recommendation in your report also includes a section that you label offense dynamics case formulation? Is that accurate?
That's correct.
And having reviewed the video now, do you believe that your offense dynamics are accurate?
I wouldn't change them.
Okay, let me ask about some of them. When you wrote in your report that in your offense dynamics section that he is a very large male who presents in a very intimidating manner, you're referencing Mr. Whitglaze, right?
That's correct.
And okay, could you please explain to everyone in the court here, how did you draw that conclusion?
My interview with him.
And what did he do to intimidate you?
It was just his whole manner. I could, I'm 5'3", and so just his being that tall and presenting the way that he presented was just it wasn't hostile, but I was careful during my interview.
Okay, Dr. Moore, please explain more though. Presenting the way he presented, what does that mean to you?
Because I felt that he was out of touch with what exactly had occurred. He wasn't taking account for any of his past transgressions, and just he was moving a lot, and I just found him to be a little bit intimidating. And I go ahead.
So if someone doesn't agree with the state's complaint, your conclusion is that they're intimidating?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
Okay,
if someone
let me ask you another question. The sheer fact that he's taller than you, that intimidates you?
I'm saying that he could be intimidating. His size, the way that he moved. He obviously didn't follow directions when I asked him to wear a mask. Yeah, I mean, I just, no. I could see where someone would be intimidated by him.
Because he didn't wear a mask, come to the meeting with a mask, did that intimidate you?
He doesn't follow directions.
But when you presented a mask to him, did he wear it?
He did, but he kept bringing it down below his mouth.
Okay, and that intimidated you?
Oh my
No.
God.
But you
I'm
still
saying
wrote
he
in your
didn't
report.
follow directions.
But it's still your conclusion based on everything you discussed that he's a very large male who presents in an intimidating manner.
Yes.
Is there something about his appearance as we see him today that everyone can see on Zoom that makes him similarly intimidating to us?
I think that's a question to you, Dr. Moran.
Is there
I
anything
can't
you-
answer for other individuals here.
He's
asking
talking
you,
to
Ms.
you.
Moore. Ms. Moore, is there anything you can see
Me?
on the image here of Mr. Wickless as we all see him that makes you intimidated?
I don't see him. He's not on here for me.
Nice play. Nice play. You gotta click on his picture, doctor.
No, but I would also say that it looks like he's sitting down.
She's right. The doctor's right.
Oh,
I mean,
so,
there's no comparison face to face,
She's right.
but I'm not seeing anything intimidating about him right now. No.
so Ms. Moore, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds that your clinical assessment is that if someone is 6 feet or taller, that they are automatically intimidating. Is that fair to say?
Not at
Mr.
all. Not at all.
So
I'm not
please
saying
then
that
just,
at all.
please actually describe then what Mr. Wickless did to intimidate you in that meeting.
As I said, he came in, he kept
Ask and
moving
answer.
around, he
Ask and
wasn't
answer.
following direction.
Ask and answer.
It was his whole manner while he was there.
All right, so going further on in your report, since you've watched the video, could you tell me when in that video Miss Stroud said that she was trying to escape his advances?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Ms. Moore, you had a chance to watch the body-worn camera video, right?
I did.
All right, and in your report, you write that Mr. Wickless tried to harm her with a stun gun, slammed her in the door when she was trying to escape his advances. Is that
Honor,
correct?
I'm going to object at this point in time. My understanding was Mr. Plesha instructed the witness to only watch the first 23 minutes of the body-worn camera. There's additional information the victim provided all the way up to the end of the body-worn camera, which was approximately an hour and a half. So I do not believe it's an appropriately formed question, and I object.
Sustained.
Your
Additionally,
Honor,
I think she testified that she also had the complaint, which all that information is contained in the complaint, as I recall. Am I correct?
Yes.
Should she
yes, Your
testify
Honor.
she had the complaint? Okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
and let's see, well, Your Honor, I actually asked about her own report, but it's
Well,
Dr.
Mr.
Moore, and
Mr. Plesha, I think you asked where did she get that information from the videotape? And again, if she only watched the first 23 minutes, and then, but she had that information, I think it's relevant that she said she had a copy of the complaint. I'm just trying to clarify so we're all on the same page.
okay, let me start over then. Dr. Morin, it's your belief that the order of operations are that, or I should ask you this, it's your belief that at some point Ms. Stroud tried to escape from Mr. Wickless, right?
According to the criminal complaint, yes.
Okay, now what did you hear though when you watched the body-worn camera?
It's the same objection, Your Honor. He provided her with part of the body-worn camera that was only 23 minutes. He did not ask her to watch the entirety.
Stand.
Wait, Your Honor, hold on 1 second. She can answer based on what she's observed, and she has provided the whole video. If she want, the question is pertinent to the portion I referenced. So I'm asking whether she watched the portion I'm referenced, and if she could reference within that section. I don't see what's out of line here out of that. That's the point of providing the video.
Did you see that in the 23 minutes that you were instructed to watch, Dr. Moran?
About whether or not she attempted to get out? Is that the question?
I believe so.
Your Honor, I'm accustomed to having written documentation and basing my reports on written documentation, not watching a video the afternoon before this court hearing. So I really can't, I can't answer that. I don't remember.
Okay, that's an answer.
Okay.
Okay. Do you recall her talking about how she refused to get out of the car because she didn't want to leave the vehicle?
And I remember her saying that she didn't want to get out of the car.
Okay, but so is that the same as trying to escape? Help me understand that.
Again, my accounting in my report is based on the criminal complaint, not this video.
All right, but Ms. Moran, you want your report to be based on the truth, right?
Are you talking about the veracity of her statements? Are you asking me to judge the veracity of her statements?
No, I'm asking you to accept them as absolutely true as she stated in the video, and I'm asking you, is refusing to get out of the car the same as unable to escape?
I can't answer these questions. Again, you're asking me to reference a video that I saw for 23 minutes yesterday afternoon.
Okay,
and it's not relevant to my report.
But that's the truth though, right, Dr. Moran? What she told
I don't
officers that day. Well, you want to know what happened, right? The complaint wasn't drafted by Kelly Strout, right?
Mr. Plusha, I believe she
no.
justified that her recommendations remain the same regardless of the video. Is there anything additional you want to do here?
I'm going to continue to pick apart the fact that the offense dynamics is based on a false narrative. Yes, Your Honor. That's the purpose of the reason we contested the sentencing is because I object to the court relying on this psychosexual evaluation. And the basis of the testimony and that objection is showing that its premises are on false narrative. And we have much more to get through about that false narrative and also the interview with Mr. Wickless and false statements that Ms. Moran included there about him. So yeah, that's the purpose of this hearing. I'd like to be given the opportunity to have due process for Mr. Wickless to interview the witness and ask questions.
But don't ask the same ones over and over. She said she didn't know. Let's move on.
Actually, Your Honor, she's skirting to answer almost any question, and she's providing partial answers, and I'm trying to work with it as best as I can. I appreciate the court's patience. This is a difficult witness.
No, she's not. She's answering your questions. Ask the next one.
Oh my God.
Dr. Moran, if the version that the witness provided is different than what you relied on, would you agree that would affect the conclusions you're drawing in your report?
And again, Your Honor, I object.
Can you repeat that?
I object. Mr. Plusha is not providing the full information. He's providing an excerpt of the investigation in this case, and then basically asking what was contained within that excerpt of this investigation. He's leaving out later statements made by the victim. He's leaving out other pieces of evidence. And this is all following a guilty plea after his client has admitted committing criminal sexual conduct and tasing this victim. So it's a continuing objection, Your Honor. I'm a little bit confused as to what exactly Mr. Plusha is trying to do here.
If I may respond, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Tennyson is free to present any and all evidence that he would like to in this hearing, just like at any trial or any hearing. The state is free to present its evidence. The defense has chosen its evidence. It's provided proper disclosure, and it's clear that Dr. Morin has witnessed and watched this evidence consistent with my request, and it appears Mr. Tennyson's request, and now I'm simply asking questions about it. If Mr. Tennyson wanted Dr. Morin to watch all the videos, to read every police report, he could have done that. He could have asked her to do it, and then he could question about that evidence, just like witnesses in trial. If you want to prepare them or not prepare them, and if you want to present pieces of evidence or not present pieces of evidence, that is your choice and strategy in the case. It's not an objectionable thing for me to say, look, Your Honor, there's more evidence that's out there and I'm not presenting it, so the defense shouldn't be able to ask questions about its evidence. That's what the state has just argued. I'd ask that the court ignore the objection.
He's right.
The objection
right.
is sustained. Move on.
They hate him.
Dr. Morin, did you review the part of the video where Kelly Stroud talks about throwing Mr. Wickless's property out of the car? Did you hear that portion?
Yes.
All right. And you watched the video and you're a licensed psychologist of many years. Could you please draw some assessment on what sort of state of mind you believe Kelly Stroud to be in?
No, I wouldn't do that. I wasn't asked to do a psychological evaluation on her, and I certainly wouldn't do render one based on that video clip.
Did she appear to be able to have a clear thought process and work with the officers on consistent basis?
She appeared to be quite distressed, and that's as far as I would go.
That's right. Next trick. Here we go. Next trick.
All right. So in the beginning, let me ask
no
you this.
tasing
Do you
this time. No
recall
tasing
hearing
this
the
time.
portions where she talked about being sex trafficking or trafficked, excuse me?
Objection as to relevance in this hearing.
And
Do you recall hearing the portion where the Kelly Stroud talked about where Mr. Wickless, if he wanted to have get a prostitute, he could go to Lake Street?
That was in the criminal complaint, yes.
Do you recall when she's talking with police at 18 minutes and 14 seconds that she said when she went to get into Mr. Wickless's car, he said, "What are you doing?"
Yes.
Do any of those facts that you saw, did you find anything that you heard in the body-worn camera video to be inconsistent with your version of the offense dynamics and case formulation section?
No, I did not.
Okay, so starting the evaluation with Mr. Wickless, you had asked him questions about his background, right?
Yes.
And did you find that he had any juvenile criminal history?
He told me that he had been placed in a juvenile facility for a year during high school because of his fighting
Okay. Let me ask you that. So his mom's present on this hearing. Did you do any background research to see what the placement was actually about?
I'm actually familiar with the facility in Austin.
Okay.
It's a residential boys program.
All right. I'm asking though, did you contact that facility and obtain any of the records related to Anthony Wickless?
No.
When you do an interview with someone, do you record that interview?
No, I do not.
And so your report is just simply a recollection of what you believed you heard that day, right?
I take copious notes.
And are the notes more than what we see in the report?
No, they are not.
So the report is all your notes.
That's correct.
Okay, could you tell us some actual statements that Mr. Wickless said around these supposed juvenile fights that he had, word for word?
No, that was the sum of it.
So, well, could you just give us an example of how the exchange went, what you asked him and what he said exactly?
I don't keep those notes. Once the reports are submitted, those notes are destroyed. So no, I can't.
Any recollection on what question you asked him that supposedly yielded the result that he was fighting in school and was placed at a juvenile program in Austin for 1 year?
I didn't ask, he offered it.
When you write in your report, he denied committing the offenses outlined in the criminal complaint. What does that mean exactly?
He denied that he wanted to have sex with her. Denied having touched her sexually, touched her breast. He did admit to having tasered her.
Okay, you didn't write any of that in your report though, right?
He also denied that he followed the victim from the home.
Well, Dr. Moore, and the question though is at no point in your report do you write that he denied asking for sexual services, or nor point in your report do you, let me just leave it one at a time. Where in your report do you write that he denied asking for sexual services?
That was subsumed in the statement that he denied the offenses outlined in the criminal complaint. So that's what criminal complaint states.
Okay, and where in your report do you write that he denied touching her breast?
I didn't specifically write that.
You're right, you just wrote some generic statement that says he denied committing the offenses outlined, right?
Not a generic, I summed it.
Okay, but couldn't someone have denied the criminal complaint by just simply denying certain aspects of it?
What he did admit to, I wrote that he admitted to it.
But you have no mention about anything, any discussion between you and Mr. Wickless at all about or the sexual services, do you?
I said that he denied having committed that offense as outlined in the criminal complaint.
Okay.
I didn't specifically state it because it generally is redundant.
But that's the, I mean, that's like literally the most important thing about this evaluation is you two discussing the sexual acts, right?
Well, there wasn't much.
You ask about the sexual acts in this case.
This was done in March. I can't answer that question.
No guess, no recollection at all?
No.
All right. Did you contact any collateral contacts regarding Mr. Wickless to see about any of the family history that you discussed in your report?
I did not.
And it's your claim that he does not have a relationship with either of his parents?
It's what he stated.
And you also provided in the report that he has a 30-year-old half brother whom he doesn't get along with, right?
That's what he stated.
These pauses are kind of wary. I wonder what kind of answer he was expecting with
Okay,
that
on
last
page 7 of 10 of your report, there's a paragraph. Let me know when you're there.
Go ahead.
Okay. You said it's concerning that Wickless's self-report does not comport with reality. Can you please explain what you mean by that?
His version of the events don't come anywhere near what's reported in the criminal complaint. And I say not just the criminal complaint, but even when I asked him about his prior record, it didn't make sense.
Okay, let's talk about his prior record. How much prior record was there?
2 items in 2019.